This is the only mouse that has fit my criteria in all the mice I've been searching for. And why? Why this one? Now, first I want to say, just because that it's the best I've ever had doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. And I want to get into that today and do a little bit of a mouse review on this mouse. So I have very specific requirements for mice. Now, I'm not just a gamer, but I'm also a content creator. So the silent part is actually very important. And I know there's software to sort of filter that out and stuff. But generally, I need to make things less complicated. And I have this set of criteria. And big name brands just don't really make what I'm looking for precisely. They always have something that's just gonna be a bit annoying. But then, of course, the budget mice and the off-brand mice will have problems as well. So why is this one the one that I'm pretty much setting as my go-to right now? So first of all, there's just so many problems with mice out there in terms of what I'm looking for. And I have a feeling that a lot of you are also looking for similar things like I am. So generally, I've been going through a lot of budget, basically disposable mice from, like this one here, which generally is a silent mouse. You can hear like the clicks are silent, but then quite often there's just no wired options. So many silent mice are wireless only, and I know wireless technology is pretty good nowadays, but I don't want to bother with that. I have a complicated setup. I already have so many things going on. Another wireless device is just one more thing that could go wrong. So I want a wired mouse. Then there's the problem of just not having that many buttons. A lot of wireless silent mice or just silent mice in general are office mice. So they just have the basic 2 buttons or 2 buttons and maybe 2 side buttons, and maybe the mouse wheel is a button, and there's just not enough buttons. That can be a very common problem as well. One huge problem, especially with like these budget mice, which are very cheap to get, they often don't have software. They don't have a memory on them. So every time you shut down your computer or restart your computer, you basically have to reset the DPI settings, and it just doesn't remember. And it's a minor thing, but it gets annoying. Office mice and silent mice in general quite often are not ergonomic. Some are, many of them are not. They tend to be ambidextrous just so they're easier to sell en masse to offices and things like that. But also, it's not just whether they're ergonomic or not, it's whether it's ergonomic to my hands, right? Everyone has different types of hands. Some have longer fingers, some have broader palms. Finding something that fits you perfectly is almost impossible, but generally you need to get something that sort of fits your hand, and most office mice do not. They tend to be very small or very heavy, or they're just not very comfortable. So out there are a couple of proper mice that might suit you. They're from proper named brands. So for example, Razer has one called the Razer Pro Click Mini. It's a silent mouse. It's an office mouse. Personally, for me, it's not ergonomic to what I need it to be, and it's too small. So it's not quite what I'm looking for, and it's a wireless mouse as well. So again, not quite fitting my criteria, but it might be an option that works for you. Logitech also has a ton of silent mice. Logitech is sort of the go-to office mouse brand, and that means they have a lot of silent options for the very busy offices where you don't want to hear the click, 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 click throughout the whole office. So Logitech has a lot of silent mice out there. One that particularly stood out to me is the MX Master 3S, and that one does look very good, but it is also seemingly very heavy at 141 grams. Personally, I like my mice a little bit lighter than that, but if I was doing just office work or just editing work and not actually doing any gaming, then the Logitech MX Master 3S does seem like a very good option to go for. Now, it does have to be said that the pro move here is to actually buy the mouse you want and to modify it to be silent. That is something that can be done, and a lot of people do it. If you're good with hardware and maybe a soldering iron, then that is an option. Or if you could get someone to do it for you, you can replace the clicker switches to be silent. At least the primary 2 clicks can be silenced by replacing the clicker switches. But that's sort of beyond my expertise and my capabilities, and sometimes you just feel a bit uncomfortable buying like a really expensive mouse and then like opening it up and modifying it. And it's a big hassle to do, right? Unless you know how to do it, in which case do that. Then, of course, there's the option of just buying disposable mice. They tend to be $5 to $20. Like I got this one. The brand is Nafi. It's like brands you've never really heard of. And they tend to do the job, but they have a lot of problems. For example, on this one, the primary clicks are silent, but then the side buttons are not silent, Or I got this one, which recently broke on me. This one is from the brand Infic, right? And another, you don't know where these mice are coming from. And just after like a couple months, the left mouse click is already going wrong. It's not registering the clicks. And, this one also has very loud side buttons. The main two buttons, silent enough, but the side buttons, full clicky sounds. And also this one has the problem of where the thumb grip, very common, they put these grooves to get the thumb grips, more grippy. So you can see it has these thumb grips where it's just dirt traps, really. It's just gonna get so dirty doing that. And also on this one, it's very easy to press the side button. You just slide the thumb up and it clicks, right? You're not even putting any pressure on the button and it clicks. And that can be very annoying, especially because these are budget mice brands with no software, so you can't rebind these keys to anything. So these side buttons are always doing forward, back on browsers. So I'm constantly accidentally pressing the back button on browsers with this mouse. So it was getting very annoying. And of course, it doesn't save the DPI settings and stuff like that as well. So the $5 to $20 budget silent mice, they kind of get the job done, but they just get more and more infuriating as time goes on. So I really wanted to find something that was a bit more well-developed, a bit more proper. But again, the big name brands didn't really fit anything. So I found this. This is what I'm calling the Mojo Projo Casa mouse. Okay, it's not called that. It's actually called the Mojo Pro Performance Silent Gaming Mouse MJ189. And this is going to be a review on this one and why this is the best mouse I've had for my personal use so far. Okay, so reviewing the form of this, the shape and build and design of it. So it is a right-handed mouse, right? So it fits me, I'm right-handed. So unfortunately, I don't think there is a left-handed version, so that is kind of annoying when there's a good right-handed mouse, but then there's no left-handed version. I understand the accessibility issue there. And this, however, is also reaching my upper weight limit requirement for gaming. This is at 127 grams. I prefer around 100 grams or just under that, but the weight is just one form factor. Just because a mouse is heavier doesn't mean it feels heavier. It does depend on your gaming style, what games you are playing, and just what feels best is what really matters. So don't just look at the weight and go like, oof, 127 grams. I mean, the Logitech mouse I mentioned earlier was like 140 plus grams. So this is lighter than that. It does seem like a heavier mouse, but how it feels is what really matters, right? So actually, I have this last cheap mouse I got, the Infic one. This one is actually lighter by about 20 grams, but it feels heavier because the form factor of this budget mouse, you see, it gets very wide, right? It gets very wide, especially on where the pinky finger goes. It's got this ridge, and I tend to hold it, full on broad like that. And my pinky was actually feeling very tired because it was so far away. It was so stretched out on that. Whereas on the Mojo mouse, it's got a flatter side, right? It's got a flatter side. So when your pinky is resting, it's just sort of along there. And that feels way better for me. So even though this is like 20 grams heavier than my previous mouse, it actually feels lighter. But it does have to be said that this is a large mouse. It is 13 centimeters long. That's a big boy, right? 13 centimeters long is just over 5 inches, which sounds average, but it is very long. And for my hand, which is generally larger with longer fingers, it actually feels almost too long. And that's for me with larger hands. I would like it to be like half a centimeter shorter at like 12.5 would actually fit me best. But what does help with this in terms of its build being too long is that very good, the mouse clicks, you can click anywhere on the mouse. You can click there and it registers. You can click there and it registers. And you can click there and it registers, right? So wherever you're clicking, wherever your finger falls, it's fine. It's going to register the click. Also, if you get this Mojo mouse, do remember to remove the plastics covering it. There's a few bits of plastic to remove. There's this side bit covered in plastic. The center shiny bit, right? That's covered in plastic, so you'd want to remove that. And also do remember when you get a new mouse to remove the plastic from the base pads. The mouse can feel quite heavy and sticky if you don't remove that. Once you remove, it's very smooth. It glides around like butter. It feels very nice, which also helps it feel a lot lighter. So even though this is 127 grams, it doesn't feel that heavy. So that's actually a really good point for this Mojo mouse. And then I have to talk about the side buttons. So you see the side buttons here. They're sort of at this weird angular position. And also this mouse in general does seem very angular. Just looking at it does make you think that it's going to be very uncomfortable. And also these side buttons are kind of weirdly positioned. Your thumb is going to rest right here, right? And you can easily press the main button right there. That one's easy to press. But then if you want to press, you know, the further back ones, you have to sort of bend your thumb like that, or like stretch your thumb out like that. And you can't really click the further forward ones or the back ones very comfortably. But this main side one, the middle one, is actually very easy to press. And also, unlike my previous mouse, just gliding up does not press it. The button has a sort of angle to it. It's got a more pointy shape. So just gliding your finger up, especially when you're just like picking up the mouse or whatever, it's not going to press the button. That's very important. It sort of does grip a bit, but it doesn't actually press the button. Also, you can see that the thumb area is smooth, no ridges or silly grippy grooves, which are just going to be dirt gunk collectors. So this makes it much easier to clean, and it does actually feel quite smooth and comfortable on your thumb. Like it does, this ridge here does keep your thumb in position, and it doesn't feel uncomfortable. It does actually just sit there quite nicely, and it feels very smooth. The matte material here feels very smooth on the other side as well. So this is actually quite comfortable for the thumb. It's just the buttons are kind of weirdly placed, but at least you got one side button that's easy to press. And then there's the middle mouse wheel, which personally it feels kind of too rigid. It's very sort of snappy, kind of you know, I would prefer this to be smoother. And also it has to be said, there's no infinite scroll on this mouse. So you just got a standard scroll wheel here. And it feels rough. It is also, I think, the loudest part on this, but I'll get into sound a little bit later. But it feels kind of rough using this. So this is probably my least favorite part of the mouse, but it's not the worst thing. It's not the worst thing. It's just kind of rigid and not sticky. It just feels kind of hard. And just a side note, the cable is 1.8 meters long to a standard USB. So it's not USB-C, it's just a standard USB at the moment anyway. Sometimes mice get updated with more modern cables, but it's just a standard USB right now, 1.8 meters, which generally is long enough for most people, but if your cable management needs a longer cable, then that could be a bit of an issue. So just check cable lengths before you buy things. And then there is something they advertise on this mouse, patented technology or some special feature or whatever. Underneath the mouse, you'll see there's these two switches here. And what they're supposed to do is determine how hard you have to press the primary two buttons to activate them. But honestly speaking, right, like you see this switch here, you can switch it down. You can do the other one as well, switch it down. It doesn't change all that much. Like I can't really tell whether it's harder to click or not. It's like very minor. It's like 10% harder to click. And it makes it like 10% louder. So honestly, it doesn't really feel like much. If you're looking at the feature list and seeing, oh, they have these patented switches, well, it doesn't really do much. It doesn't feel like it makes any difference at all. So if you just slide it up towards where the cable is, That's supposed to be the lightest click. It makes it very slightly quieter, and honestly, it doesn't really matter either way. It seems like a bit of a gimmick, so you can try switch it either way, but on the one I have, it really doesn't feel like it makes any difference, really, so I just pushed it forward towards the cable where it's supposed to be lighter and quieter. Okay, then we have to talk about sound, and I'll try represent this as best as I can. And the whole point of me looking for these mice and what makes them so hard to find is that they need to be silent. That's so hard to find a good silent mouse. You know, quite often, like I showed earlier with the other mouse, the main two buttons are silent, but the side buttons are not. You know, it's just... This is not a silent mouse. Meanwhile, this Mojo mouse is actually silent. First of all the buttons are silent, and I'll try to demonstrate here with my microphone. So, first of all, do consider the limits of physical reality. It can't be 100% totally silent. This is still a physical object. Your hand coming into contact with the mouse will create noise, right? The mouse moving on your mousepad will create some noise. So it's not completely silent. Let's be real and realistic with physics. But in terms of what is possible, this is pretty much the best you can kind of hope for. First of all, the two primary buttons are quietened. The side buttons are all quietened. The middle mouse button is quietened. And the DPI buttons, or just those two buttons there, are quietened as well. So let's do a sound test. I'm going to bring the mouse right up to my microphone, and we're going to do left click, right click, middle mouse button click, the DPI up plus button, the DPI down button minus, and then the side buttons, there's 4 of them. That's the front, top front, middle, and back. Now, those are what it sounds like when it's literally 1 inch or 2 inches away from your ear or a microphone, right? But that's not how you're going to use the mouse. You're not using the mouse like this, are you? You're not going around, all right, let's get to gaming. So when it's further away, it's basically about, what, like a foot, half a meter away from you, depending on where you position your mouse. So a more realistic test would be to have a similar distance between the mouse and the microphone. So this is about, I don't know, a foot, foot and a half, somewhere around there. And this is what the mouse does when I'm spamming all the buttons. So obviously you can still hear the mouse, right? It's not completely silent. But having said that, you might hear a little bit of noise. Like in my experience, if you have any music playing or a game going, even without headphones or just watching a video, you're not hearing any of these clicks or noises coming from the mouse. And that's you sitting at your desk using the mouse specifically. Anyone else in the room, even like just a couple meters away, they're not going to hear a thing out of this mouse. So honestly speaking, in terms of sound, that's kind of the best I could possibly hope for. And it doesn't come up in my recordings unless I'm trying to make it obvious that it's making noise. All right, now we're going to talk about the software. This being an actual proper gaming mouse, it means it comes with software. And there's a lot here, and also a lot of good and some bad and some weird. So this is the software. This is the software we're dealing with. Now, first thing that a lot of people complain about is that the size of this window does not scale with your resolution. This is the size of the window. And if you're on a 2K monitor, this is just going to be half the size. You can't read any of the text. I'm recording right now at 1080p, and this is the size. It's already kind of small. There's no maximize, there's no scale. It's very weird that they have this software, which is a fixed pixel size. Now, when it comes to the software, you can rebind all 9 buttons to anything you want, including the DPI button, right? So this is actually very good. All of these are rebindable. You can see from the side view as well. All of these are rebindable to pretty much anything you want, including macros. So one interesting thing, though, is that if you go to the options you have here, one thing they did sort of put in is rapid fire. Now, rapid fire is supposed to be you press and hold and it just clicks. Now, this is not customizable in terms of how fast it's clicking, because this is often considered cheating, right? Because you can have a rapid fire button and it can just click like inhumanly fast. But that's not what it's doing here. So here you can see, and I've bound a button to be rapid fire. And if I hold it down, you'll see how fast it's clicking. That's how fast it clicks. It's still a human speed of clicking. So this is just something that's going to be very useful if you play Diablo and don't want to get like finger pain, or you're just having finger problems because you're an old school Diablo fan and your fingers just hurt now for some reason. But anyway, this is what you're doing with the rapid fire. It's an option, a nice option to have, and you can just bind any button on the mouse to this sort of rapid fire. You just press and hold and it just click, 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 click. And it's not really inhuman cheating or anything like that. It's just a rapid clicking like a human would, but you just have to press and hold it. Then there's the macro manager, and it's, you know, standard macro manager. You press A, you press D, you press, you know, these keys and you can stop recording. But you have to create a new macro first. So let's say I record those keys and stop recording. We've created macro 0. I can then set this button to the macro and then pick our macro 0, press OK. And now if I press that button, it does the macro. So macros, just keep in mind, you can't press and hold it, but every time I press that button, it just does the macro, right? So keep in mind, in gaming, macros are often considered cheating, but if you're not cheating with it, then macros are definitely something you can do. Let me just go ahead and delete that macro. That's not really useful for me. But also you can then bind any button to the macro, or you can also just deactivate buttons, which is very nice. You can, like, I just deactivate all of these because right now I'm not using them. And I was worried about accidentally pressing them, but you know, it's not a problem. So I'm just leaving them deactivated for now, but it's fine. Then there's the screen editor. Okay, now one of the least kind of useful things on this is that there is actually a screen on the side. It's flickering right now because it's probably not matching, this micro display is probably not matching my frame rate on the video, but there's this screen on the side where you can put a graphic or some text or something. And it does add this sort of section to the front, and it doesn't really get in the way. But considering this is sort of considered a heavier mouse, maybe it would be better if this didn't exist, just to make it lighter, you know? But, well, I mean, it's fine. It's sort of, I know micro screens are kind of the trend now. They're in your PC cases and stuff, and just on headphones, micro displays, and it's sort of fine to have. I'm not that big of a fan. I generally prefer to minimize how many lights are coming off of my peripheral, so I leave this off, but you can see you can have a graphic there or some text. And in the software, there's the screen editor where you can determine what displays onto the screen. You can have a graphic, a pretty low resolution. It's a black and white screen, so it's just going to show black and white. You can have some text there, and it will show that. You can have up to 12 characters of text on this thing, which is fine, I guess. You could have it display the report rate, I guess, if that's sort of useful. You can have your version of the software there. You can have a DPI value there or a sensor there. Generally, it's not something I would use. So I just go to text, delete everything, and just make it blank completely. Going through the rest of this stuff, there is separate X and Y axis sensitivities. It's a nice feature to have that in case you do need to have them move at different speeds, going left to right and up and down. Sensor height, I like it to keep it low, but you can up it to 3 millimeters. 2 millimeters is the shortest it can be. Now here, the DPI settings is very good. Not only can you customize each of these numbers individually, you can activate and deactivate them so that they're an option to have on your mouse at all. And this color here determines the color of the mouse wheel. But it does have to be said that for some reason, this particular menu has not been translated. It's not in English, even though the rest of the software, I have picked English as a language. This menu did not get translated, but essentially, this is the color associated with this DPI for the mouse. So you can see the mouse wheel color here. If I change the DPI settings, it then changes the color of the mouse wheel light, right? So I use that to sort of determine where I want it to be and just recognize what kind of DPIs I want to switch between. But you can see that it's actually quite flexible. So that's really good. And down here, there's the lighting options. Now, this lighting is, well, this lighting is for the icon on the mouse, this thing here. And it's got some good options, static, breath, neon, finger tapping. There's all these colors and stuff like that. But the main problem I have is this icon, it's not a very fetching icon. It's not the coolest icon to have. So you can see the icon we have here. It's basically some kind of cityscape, and it's not the coolest icon to look at. So generally, I just turn this light completely off because I don't want to be looking at this icon. I mean, sure, but it sort of looks like a home appliance icon. I mean, no offense to Mojo, but you know, it's just not that much of a fetching icon, and it doesn't really fit the gamer aesthetic. But I mean, if you're fine with it, that's what it does. You know, that's the icon that can be lit up with this software, and you can pick the colors and stuff. But, you know, there are also profiles. You can switch between your profiles here, and it lags a little bit when you swap between them. So yeah, now I'm back to my profile. This light is now off. The light options are not depicted in the center area here. This is not what my mouse looks like right now, but you get the idea. You can also change the intensity of the scroll wheel light, so it can be brighter. It actually gets very bright, so I'm leaving it on 25%. It's been 25% this whole time. You can adjust the report rate down. Well, that really messes up my mouse. Down to 125. Let's get it back up to 1000. Leaving it on 1000 is generally best unless you have a specific reason. Mouse speed, another mouse speed option, which I guess plays together with the sensitivity. You can fine tune things here, and your double click speed can be tweaked here. I double click pretty fast, so I leave that pretty high. And your scroll speed, number of rows, or just to have one full screen. So a good point with this software is that it doesn't need to be left open. You can close the software and it doesn't need to boot on startup for your computer. So it's not in the way or anything. You just set the options you want and you can close the software, quit the software, and everything is remembered when you start up. The mouse just retains the settings. So that's actually really good. You don't have to keep the software open the whole time, which is nice. Also, just very occasionally, I have to say that the software has crashed on startup a couple times, especially when I've been opening and closing the software quite frequently. It's crashed a couple times for me. And also you can see that it does sometimes lag. For example, when you're switching from one profile to another, there's like a minor bit of lag. Or when you're changing certain options, it does lag a little bit. So it's not the smoothest of softwares, but the function is there. Overall, there's a lot of minor, slightly annoying bugs, and like with the, this particular menu not being translated, there's all these tiny minor things, but the functionality is there. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it and can't complain too much now that I actually have some software rather than those budget mice that don't have any software at all. Okay, so just as some final warnings when it comes to buying these mice, right? Generally with these brands that you've not really heard of too much, or they're just sort of unknown brands, like I have the Nafi or the Infic mouse. This is Mojo, which seems to be somewhat higher quality and a bit better known, but it's not like Razer or Logitech, right? With these sorts of brands, the quality can be pretty inconsistent. Just looking at the reviews for this Mojo mouse, there's been a lot of reports of, buttons stopping working, or someone dropped it and it stopped working. So the build quality, I can't really open it up and inspect how, strong it's going to be. I don't want to do a drop test. I bought this, so I don't want to break it, and I'm liking it so far, so I don't want to damage it. So I'm just making sure I don't drop it or damage it on purpose, right? But there have been reports of clicks stopping to working or double clicking on single clicks. Some people say between a few months, some people said after 3 years. Generally, you can't get much consistency with when things go wrong. But so far, nothing has gone wrong for me with this mouse. Also, registering the warranty is kind of confusing, unclear, and it seems... I don't even know if they're going to honor it, because when you buy the Mojo mouse, to register for the warranty, they actually ask you to fill out a contact form and write in your order number and stuff like that. It's not like a proper registering warranty form. And I submitted a form and I didn't get a reply. I didn't get any confirmation email. So I don't know if I've registered for the warranty or not. I might send it again and see if they reply on the second attempt. But generally, the registering for the warranty doesn't seem to, I don't know if it's working. I've not received any contact back after trying to register, following their own instructions, filling out a contact form. So generally, you want to try and rely on a store warranty. If you're buying this off of a website or from a store, in-store, try to make sure the store gives you a warranty rather than relying on the Mojo warranty directly. That's just a risk you have to take, I guess, when you're going somewhat off-brand. Also, this mouse is pretty expensive. It's not like the budget mice between $5 to $20. You know, it's a pretty pricey mouse. And at this price point, you can get other mice from the more proper brands. You can get Razer mice or Logitech mice for this amount of money. And also, if you look at the price online, in the US, it is significantly cheaper than if you're in the UK or the EU. The price of this Mojo mouse does go up quite a bit when you're in Europe. And I'm not too sure about the rest of the world, but it does go up quite a bit. So at that price point, if you don't need this set of features and functionality specifically, I would recommend you get a more proper brand. Especially if you don't need a silent mouse, then that really opens up options for you. Or if your hand happens to be comfortable using like the Razer Pro Click Mini, then that would be a decent option as well. So if you can get another mouse that's from a bit more of a reliable source, then yeah, I would recommend that. But for me, particularly with what I need and what I want, this is the only mouse that's fitting my criteria right now. So I'm getting this and I'm using this right now. And so far, I'm pretty happy with it. As long as nothing breaks or goes wrong with it, I'm going to be very happy with this mouse. But we have to see, maybe after a year, things will change. And if anything does go wrong with this mouse in the future, after I upload this video, then I will write in the pinned comment what went wrong and why it went wrong or anything like that. You know, I will update down below. So if there's no problems written in the pinned comment, nothing bad has happened yet. If this goes 3 years without breaking, I'll be very happy, right? Some people said the button stopped working after 3 years. If it goes longer than 3 years, I'll consider it phenomenal. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my review of the Mojo Projo Casa mouse. It's not called that. It's the Mojo Pro Performance Silent Gaming Mouse MJ189. That's my review of this mouse. I hope you found it interesting and or useful. If you'd like to support the channel, if you're buying any games off of GOG, just click the referral link down below. You click that link, buy any game, it really does help support this channel. Or you can support directly on Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member if you'd like to help things out or if you found this useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.